Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast throwback series. My name is Debra Chantry-Taylor and I'm the host of the podcast. I'm a certified EOS implementer, a family business advisor and a business owner myself. And I developed this podcast to help bring you tips and tools to help you create a better business and create a better life. For the next 5 episodes though, we're revisiting some of the most inspiring, thought-provoking conversations from our archives. These episodes are packed with wisdom, practical advice, and stories to help you create a business that delivers better results and a better life. So whether you're hearing them for the first time or enjoying a refresher, each one offers timeless insights to help you on your journey. Let's dive into this week's throwback episode. In this flashback episode, Sara B brings her wealth of experience to the table as we discuss building better family businesses. From navigating tricky dynamics to setting clear boundaries, Sara shares tools and tips to strengthen both your family and your business. Let's relive this fantastic episode.
A lot of advisors tell family business owners to keep their spouses out of it. Don't share the bylaws or the governance, pieces of the business. Don't share the financials. Just keep, family separate from business. And unfortunately, that leaves the spouses in the situation where, sadly, the only thing they'll hear is when things are so bad that the family business owner comes home and complains about something. So they're very insulated, typically from the good side of the business, and they have a front row seat to the dark side or the hard side. And that's especially hard then for spouses who are the parents of next generation owners. And if they lack insight or they've been kept separate from the business, they'll want to push for things like making sure that all the kids work in the business, making sure that all the kids make the same amount of money or at the same level of responsibility. And it ends up being incredibly dysfunctional for the family business. And they don't even realize that what they're pushing for is not good for the business, good for the family, because they're really coming from a place of, loving their spouse and loving their kids.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. Today I am joined by what I like to call my US twin. So Sara B. We had a bit of a joke the other day that if we had grown up in the same country, would have been the naughty girls at the front of the class who were always asking all the questions and just disrupting everything, but we would be having fun with it. So, hey, welcome. Great to have you back again, Sara.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's okay. Now, those of you who don't know, Sara B. is actually a very well-recognized family business advisor over in the US. She does a lot of work with many, many family businesses, and not only with the owners of the family business, but also with their spouses, which we're going to talk a bit more about today. So, Sara, give us a little bit of an introduction. Tell us what you've been up to since the last time you were on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Since the last time I was here, I released my second book, and it's for the people who are married to family business owners, for those spouses. And I have to admit, I didn't plan to write this book, but I realized there's nothing else that I could find on the planet for people who are married to the owners of family businesses, and there's a huge need. And so I was really excited to put this. It's really a handbook. I call it a handbook for spouses of family business owners.
Yeah, because your first book, I use that a lot with my clients over here in New Zealand. It is a handbook more than a book, right? It's really designed to get you thinking and to start to do exercises. It's not just about reading the theory and the academia behind it, but actually getting your hands dirty and answering those questions. And the new book is similar, right? But it is written specifically with the spouse in mind.
Yes, it is very similar. I jokingly said once that what I really do is I make adult coloring books because there's lots of white space. There's place to write. So same idea here with this one as the first, is it's meant to be picked up, written in, dog-eared pages, the whole 9 yards, and really to help people make decisions and start conversations.
Perfect. So we've talked a little bit about family business in the past, and obviously you and I are a big fan of using the EOS model and framework to help those family businesses. What are the biggest challenges that spouses of family business face? Like, how is it different for them?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm going to not give you the top 20. I'll just try to leave it at 2 or 3. But one of the big ones is, at least in the US, and I think this is true in a lot of other parts of the world, a lot of advisors tell family business owners to keep their spouses out of it. Don't share the bylaws or the governance, pieces of the business. Don't share the financials. Just keep, family separate from business. And unfortunately, that leaves the spouses in the situation where, sadly, the only thing they'll hear is when things are so bad that the family business owner comes home and complains about something. So they're
Right.
very insulated, typically from the good side of the business, and they have a front row seat to the dark side or the hard side. And that's especially hard then for spouses who are the parents of next generation owners. And if they lack insight or they've been kept separate from the business, they'll want to push for things like making sure that all the kids work in the business, making sure that all the kids make the same amount of money or at the same level of responsibility. And it ends up being incredibly dysfunctional for the family business. And they don't even realize that what they're pushing for is not good for the business, good for the family, because they're really coming from a place of, loving their spouse and loving their kids. Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, I can see how that can create some really major issues in the family business. So what do you advocate for? How do you say that they should get involved?
Yeah, I start with this idea, and we got to talk about this before, of the three-circle model that came out of Harvard, the three-circle model of family business, and helping spouses understand that there's the three circles, there's the family, there's the business, and there's ownership. And that, especially helping spouses understand that the definition of fairness in each of those three circles is different. Often in the family, the idea of fair is equal. Everybody gets the same dollar amount or a similar type of gift. But that fair inside of the business shouldn't be that. It should be more like you are qualified for the job and you're paid, the market rate for the job, for example.
Yeah.
That's what fair should look like in the business.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you've got the ownership thing as well. So, it's really important that you actually understand each of those and how they fit together.
Yes.
And there's ways to make sure that your family is well looked after. It doesn't have to be through the business, does it?
Yes, and that's so important. I like to help spouses understand too, each of those three circles should have its own leader and its own set of decisions. And how you take care of the next generation is really a family circle decision. It's not a business circle decision. And so many family businesses just put those three circles in one and say, well, if we're going to take care of the family, they all need to have a job or they all need to have ownership and they need to get a check every 2 weeks or every quarter. And sadly, that's really hard and dysfunctional for most families.
Yeah, and it not only affects the family, but it affects, particularly as we're working with the business most of the time, it affects the business as well if they're seeing that sort of stuff go on in the business, don't they? Because I know you did a series on LinkedIn which had me in absolute stitches, where you talked about some of the things that, how not to run a family business, if you like. And it was things like, letting your Auntie Mabel do the job just because she's your auntie, and things that we kind of see, but we don't call out because perhaps it's just become the norm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do. I actually just said this a couple hours ago that I think my next book needs to be How to Fail in Your Family Business, because people love that. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Alex Hormozy wrote a bunch of Twitter tweets. That's the word for it.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know what
right.
I'm saying. About how to stay poor. And I took that and it inspired me to write this How to Fail in Your Family Business. And it's so true, right? People just assume, keep your auntie, you wouldn't want to be mean to that person. You wouldn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. But sadly, what's happening is you're making everybody else around them feel uncomfortable. And usually that Auntie Mabel knows they're not good at their job. And so they are uncomfortable anyway.
Yeah, so it's actually,
just
if you have the conversation and you sort of work out whether there is a role, because there may be another role in the business that potentially Auntie Mabel is good at doing, but she has to really get it, want to have capacity to do it, or it might be that actually she might prefer to go off and do something completely different, and not actually be involved in the business. But it's a tough conversation to have, isn't it?
Yes, it's so hard. And I just heard this great speaker at the EOS conference, and she was saying that her dad gave her this advice that everything's hard, right? It's hard to keep this person who doesn't get the job, want the job, and have the capacity. It's also hard to have the conversation. Pick the hard thing that moves you forward in a more positive way. And I was so inspired by that. It's just so true, especially in family business.
And I think it goes back to that old adage of short-term pain, long-term gain, because in the long
Totally.
term, using our example, Auntie maybe will be happier, the business will be happier. And in actual fact, potentially it means the business can run much more effectively,
Oh,
much more
yes.
sustainably, much more profitably. And then actually the whole family benefits anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been very fortunate to do a couple of your courses just recently, which have been absolutely fabulous. So you do a lot of work with the businesses, but also with business advisors to help equip them for
Yes.
looking after family businesses. Um, what what is it important to know if you are a family business advisor?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. In my opinion, there's a couple really important things. Number one is, especially in a second or third or fourth generation family business, especially in smaller communities, the people leading the businesses have suffered in many situations under never having someone tell them they do something wrong. Especially, and I say, especially in smaller communities, so a kid might grow up and their grandfather, grandmother's name is on the library or whatnot. And even as a young kid, everybody kind of treats them really carefully. So even as a little kid, maybe their teachers or their coaches don't even tell them, you did it wrong. Your opinion's not good. I disagree with you. And so as an advisor to family businesses, I think it's really important to be brave, to be courageous, and to give family business owners the gift of pointing out where they're making mistakes, of sharing your expertise and keeping them from going in dysfunctional or scary directions. Most family business owners I've met in my life appreciate it so much. And it's so rare that someone's truly honest and truly clear when they think that owner is going in a wrong direction. That's number one.
Yeah, and actually, I was thinking about there's another. I was talking not just in family businesses, but in all businesses. Often we ask people like our lawyers and our accountants to be part of our advisory board, but
Yes.
really they're a service provider, which means they're
Yes.
probably not going to have the tough conversations because they're relying on you for a paycheck at the end of the day. So,
Yes.
so I think as a family business advisor, we have given the permission to actually have those more difficult conversations and to point those things out, whereas your
Yes.
lawyer or your accountant probably isn't going to do that.
Yes. And in my heart of hearts, I wish more lawyers and accountants felt that they could do it and would even start the relationship by saying, if you work for me, I'm going to say the hard truths. But absolutely, if those folks can't do it for any other advisor helping with succession, conflict, EOS implementation, any other sort of system implementation, while we do rely on the paycheck to do it, I think we're so much more valuable and we've earned the paycheck when we say the hard things, when we point out the difficult things and help them move into a better hard place than the current hard place they're in.
And when we often do have to enter the danger, I don't know if you've ever seen, but I actually have cuddly toys in my session room. And one of them is actually a sacred cow. And the other day, I actually found myself holding the sacred cow. And I sort of said, look, you can't attack me because I've got the sacred cow in my hands, but I do need to bring something up. And it was, I think those, that's what gives a little bit of fun to it, but also it gives a little bit of permission to have those difficult conversations by hiding behind a fluffy cow, if that works for you. Yeah.
I think it's genius. It's so genius. I'm sure you have people say this to you too. People say to me, "Oh, you work with family business. You must like drama or you must like, tears or whatever." And I feel like I work with the most courageous people, the most passionate people on the planet. And I actually don't see that much drama because people mostly will do the brave thing, even if it means they have to hold the fluffy cow or the fluffy elephant or whatever in order to do it. They do it. And it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first kind of tip that you'd have. Then what else would you say to people who are working with family businesses?
Yes. So that's absolutely the first one. The second one is to always keep that 3-circle model of family business in your mind as an advisor and help that family business owner or next generation owner or spouse to really understand, is the right circle making the decision here?
Yep.
A lot of businesses fail to make the business decisions. They let the family do it or vice versa. That is really huge, I think.
Yeah. And of course, this podcast is really aimed more at the businesses themselves. So let's explore those 3 circles for a little bit, just to give them a bit of a sense what we're talking about. So we've got the family circle first and foremost. Tell us a bit about the family circle. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I'd like to go in a little different direction. You can pull me back if you want.
Sure.
But if you think about the family, the business, the ownership, The family circle, the business circle, and the ownership should all have leaders. So the business should have, in the EOS world, a visionary, an integrator. Lots of other businesses might call it, the managing director, executive director, president, COO, or whatever. A common term in the US is the chief executive officer, the CEO. The family circle also needs to have a leader. And there's some research and literature in the family business world that calls that leader of the family circle, they also call that role the CEO, but it's the chief emotional officer. And I think it's super clever, right? And somebody laughed once and they said, oh yeah, we've got a chief emotional officer. It's like, no, it's not the chief emotional officer. It's the chief emotion officer, meaning, or the not chief, be emotional, but it's that person leading the family. It's often that matriarch or patriarch who's making sure everybody gets together, who sometimes is saying, quit fighting, cut it out, get your heads on straight. But they're really the one often who holds the family history and the family traditions. And make sure that perpetuates over generations. So that's hugely important in that family circle. Other things is, on the family side, is having family meetings that aren't about owning the business and aren't about running the business, but they're family meetings that are about the family's assets, whether it's money, property, family heirlooms, that kind of thing. It's important. And then also family meetings are about talking about traditions, conflicts, discussions. How do we take care of the next generation? How do we educate the next generation? That's just huge. And then of course the business has the business conversations they need to have, and ownership. And it might be very similar people in each of those meetings. It probably will be in a family business, very similar people, but you've got to get the right folks in the right meetings.
And make sure you're wearing the right hat, right? So in this particular meeting, this is my role. In this other meeting, this is my role. Yes. That's very cool.
Yes.
Excellent.
In one,
Okay,
you
cool.
might be brother and sister, and the other one, you might be running the business.
Yes.
And the other one, you're the owners making a decision about if you buy something or sell something.
That's a really good example. Perfect. Okay. So that was tip number 2, I think, that we were talking about. What about number 3? Keep that in mind all the time, because as I think you said, I think they get very mixed up very easily. Or actually, some people don't even realize they exist, or that there is a role for those 3 things. And I think once you start to do that and can be really clear about the hats that you're wearing and which meeting you're in, it just gives some real clarity around how we deal with things.
Yes. And that's, connected to that 3 circle are 2 tips that I like to give advisors that can be helpful. One is to literally teach your clients to put on pretend hats and say who's talking to whom in the room. Whether you're an attorney or a CPA or a family business advisor who's helping a family business through conflict or succession, to take a moment and say, who is in this room? Who's talking to whom right now? So that's one tip connected to that 3 circle model. The other one connected to that is I always advise, and I always suggest to advisors that they advise their family businesses to literally think of that 3 circle model as 3 separate tables, and the importance of sitting around each of those tables on a regular basis. One might be a family dinner, right? That's one table. Just getting together and having fun. Another is a leadership team meeting, strategically making decisions about the business and who works there. And the third is that ownership table, and why do we own this business? And do we want it to grow? Are we willing to invest in it? How much money do we need out of it? Having those conversations and doing that on a regular basis. Even when things feel like they're really smooth and going well, it's still important to sit around those 3 different tables on a regular basis.
And I suppose it's a little bit like the level 10 meetings that we use in EOS. I have some clients who sort of say to me, well, we have to go for 90 minutes, don't we? It's like, well, no, you should definitely have them regularly. If you happen to finish a little bit early, that's fantastic. Then you can go and do something more social, or do you work on your rocks. But it's actually, even you've got to still have them on a regular basis. People know that they're there. And if you happen to finish a bit early, then that's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
But come to the table. What I will often say too is, don't go over. Trust that you can get the most important stuff done in the time that you have. Don't just let it go on and on, right? Because unfortunately that'll happen too, where they just go on and on and on, and it stops really being It might feel productive, but it's not productive anymore.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Hey, just going back to your hats analogy. I used to have a friend who was actually, I met them through going out and trying to find an agency to work with, an advertising agency. And I met this couple who ran this advertising agency, and we became very, very good friends, which can be a little bit challenging at times, because when you're very, very good friends with somebody and they're providing services to you, I used to literally say, hey, I'm now putting on my my client hat, and I don't, I'd much rather stick my head down a toilet than have this conversation, but I've got some challenges around what's going on with my client hat on. And then I would, we'd have the conversation. I'd say, right, now I'm taking my client hat off. Now let's go grab a glass of wine and we can kind of be friends. But it was really important for me personally, because it actually gave me permission to go, hey, I love you as a friend, as a family member, whatever it might be. But in this particular situation, this is the role that I am here for. So I have to put this hat on.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I've shared that 3-circle model with so many people who say, oh, everybody needs this, actually, right?
Yes.
Everybody in the world, everybody in business needs this. And whatever the label of the 3 circles are, it is kind of irrelevant. But I had this great, I got to observe a family business have this amazing conversation where they were trying to figure out who should be the leader of the sales team. And the founder, dad, was done. He'd done it for almost 40 years. He was tired. It was time to find someone else to do it. And a next generation daughter was saying, I really think I could do this. And he was kind of trying to talk her out of it. She was starting to feel upset. Tears were kind of welling in her eyes. And finally we stopped and said, who's talking to whom? And we realized dad was talking to colleague. Yeah. And when we got dad to stop talking and the owner and the sales leader to talk to his colleague, he had complete faith in her. But when the dad was talking, he was trying to protect her and her young family and her time. Yeah. And it was really uncomfortable, mixed up, feelings were getting hurt. And then once we got the right hats on, it was clear. It was healthy, just like you and your friends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah. I mean, I know my family sadly aren't with us anymore, but I know that when they were around, I mean, we had a very complex relationship. We all loved each other dearly, but we were quite similar in many respects as well. And so we'd have those things. And it's right. I mean, even though I was, in my early 50s when my father passed away, he still treated me like a child much of the time we were actually together. It was and they just can't help themselves, right? So it's important to recognize that they're doing what they think is absolutely best. It comes from a place of love.
Yes. Can I say one more tip for advisors?
Yeah, please.
I should have said this first. I think there are times when it makes sense as an advisor to meet one-on-one with different family members, but I think those opportunities are few and far between. I think it's so much healthier as an advisor when you get people in the room together and they hear the words out of each other's mouths and you're helping them learn to have those hard conversations versus an advisor getting in the middle of that. And I see so many advisors just start out every engagement, no matter what, going and having these one-on-one conversations. And I think I know this is going to upset some people who hear this, but I just think it's actually it encourages the dysfunction instead of encouraging the hard conversations and helping them learn to say these hard things to each other.
Yeah. I mean, we have this with not only family businesses, but any business that I'm working with EOS, where I always say to them, look, I am completely available for you in between our sessions. Sure. But if they ring up and they've got some kind of issue with a person, with something's going on in the business, I go, that's great. Now, please take that to your next level 10 meeting. Or if you like, we can bring it up at the quarterly. But I'm not going to try and help you solve that because that's actually a team issue to resolve, not an individual. Yeah. And why not have that conversation with somebody?
I same thing. I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to hear you out, but I'm always going to point you back to each other. I'm not here to fish for you. I'm here to teach you to fish.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I'm back studying again at university, doing my next part of my family business accreditation, family business advisor accreditation. And I think the best part is in the beginning, it is worthwhile having a conversation about the family as a whole. You know, what is the family history? What's the family tree? Getting a bit of sense of where the family has actually come from, because there's a danger of kind of thinking that all families are the same and they have the same kind of issues, but they may have come, from if you understand the family history and where they've come from and how they've got to where they are, you can start to pick on some of the things that might become issues in the future.
It
So I
is
think in the
so
beginning, it's
spooky.
nice to do that. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I love that you're doing this next part of your education. I bet it's a blast.
Oh, I'm loving
And
it.
I
Yeah.
don't know how you find time to do all the things you do. So that is incredible. But I completely agree. And it's, well, for one, it's fascinating, of course, for me as an advisor, but often for them, their eyes become wide open and they notice these trends that happen generation after generation that they didn't realize were happening, right? That just keep happening. So I think that's super fascinating. And I think it's really important for advisors to really help a family business, but help them understand on the family side, why are we a family? What's important about being a family? What are we about? What's our identity? Kind of similar to the core values we talk about in EOS. What are your values as a family? And then do the same thing on the ownership side too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go back into the spouse stuff now. So I want to find out more about, you've obviously got the book, which as you said is a real handbook, an adult coloring in book. I love that. And I highly recommend it. By the way, I actually, Sarah very kindly brought some to Dallas for me when we caught up in Dallas. So I brought some home in my suitcase. And so if anybody wants to grab hold of one of these books over here in New Zealand, they're more than welcome to come and give me a yell and I'll drop one off to them. But so you've got the handbook, but you've also developed another tool, haven't you, to help with this?
Yes.
Just by the way, the book is called Married
Yes.
to the Family Business, is it? Is that what the right
Yes,
word?
it's called Married to the Family Business, a handbook for spouses of family business owners.
Perfect.
And thank you for offering to get the book to people. I really appreciate that.
Oh, look, as I said to you before we got on the podcast,
Amazing.
we actually had the chairman of the Family Business Association from New Zealand over in here doing a podcast the other day. We had such a great time talking about family business, but I actually gave him both of your books and he was just blown away because there isn't the thing I love about them. I always say that the brilliance is in the simplicity. And think I've read every single family business book there is out there. And often they are huge, they're academic, they're chunky.
Yes.
And you kind of go, I can't even find the time to read it myself. It's like, so I can't imagine a family business would, but yours is just beautiful and simple. And he was the same. It's like, oh, this is like really good because it's such a simple tool to use as opposed to a lot of it, which is based on academia.
Yes.
Yeah.
That frustrates me so much when books are thick and hard to read and have 4-syllable words in them. Like nobody needs that.
Yeah.
So, if you can't turn it into a contraction, what's going on here? So, I cannot understand that. But anyway, yes. So I have created an online resource for the spouses of family business owners. And what I think is so fascinating is when I first started marketing it, people thought it was for the couple to participate
the couple together.
in. Yes. Which makes me think, I probably should build something for the couple. But this really is for that person who's married to the family business owner. And it's meant to help them really dig in and understand the 3-circle model, understand the role they've played in either helping the family business be healthy or not healthy. Really help them understand the idea that a very common thing that happens in family businesses is people create communication triangles. And a lot of the time they'll go to the spouse and say, your spouse is so mean to me. Right. And then the spouse will go to that person and say, oh, you're mean. And they'll say, I'm not mean. That person's mean. Right. And they get in between relationships. And so it talks about how to identify triangles and how to get yourself out of them because it's really not healthy for the individual or anybody who's involved. And then I give them some tools to identify that and then really work through their own ways of thinking and understanding how they want to participate or not in the family business.
Okay. Yeah. And so, as we said, it is a book that you work through. It asks you some questions. It gets you to think about it, gets you to write the answers down there. But your online course, I'm assuming, is a little bit different. So the book is about writing things down. The online course is a series of
Yep. So videos? I should say I was describing the online course there. So the book is a chance to write down, think about it. The online course goes deeper into things, including the triangles and how do you manage how you're thinking about this and how do you actually change your own way of interacting. So the online course it's 5 different sessions, and there's actually several points in the sessions when I say, okay, hit pause right now, please, and write down your thoughts.
Nice.
So it's in many ways similar to the book in that there's some learning and then writing and thinking, and then learning and writing and thinking and making some commitments to yourself. And it's really designed to be something you come back to every 90 days to help you go deeper into your understanding. Yeah.
So it's a book on steroids in terms of it gives you a little bit more depth and yeah, fantastic.
That's what I should have called it.
Brilliant. And I do find it fascinating because I saw your journey where, you launched it and then you had all this feedback that people thought it was for couples and it really was for the spouse. So I think there might be something in there. I mean, we only have a very, very small business at the moment, but I always wonder because my husband is not involved in the business, but I always wonder about, I don't think he quite fully understands what goes on and how do I get him more involved. There must be a workshop there for couples, I'm sure.
Apparently there's a desire for it. So
yes, that's right. That's
either
good.
you or I need to create this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really interested. Both you and I, we love the family business. I think it's because I love the fact that we can actually help them get a better family life by helping them get a better business life. And I think that's what kind of drives me and motivates me. I always say that life is too short. Having lost all of my family in a very short period of time, I don't want anybody to not spend the time, good quality time with their family. I was very lucky to spend good quality time with my family. So what do you think the main differences are between a family business and just a normal privately owned business?
Yeah. Well, on one side, I would say there often aren't that many differences because often a privately owned business will have maybe one other random family member in there, right? But I will say when you're looking at multi-generational family businesses, I think the biggest thing is the horizon. A business that isn't thinking about the next generation owning it might be thinking about who are we selling it to? Are we going to close it? How much do we have to grow it to sell it for a better price? I have some of those different kind of priorities. Whereas in a multi-generational family business, they're often thinking 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years out about building the business for the family. And often they're thinking about the community too. And for me, that's what gets me so excited about working with family businesses. I know the numbers in the US that family businesses tend to have people work for them longer. Those owners give more generously to their communities. They invest in things like parks and art and schools and music, right? Yeah. I know those statistics in the US. I'm guessing they're pretty similar around the world.
They are, yes.
They really, really commit to their communities and their employees because I believe their timeline is so far out, decades out versus maybe 12, 15, maybe 20 years for other businesses who probably have a sale in mind.
It is really interesting, actually, because when you start looking at, what are actually family business, some of the biggest brands around the world are actually family businesses. And here in New Zealand, I've been learning a lot more. You've got the Barfoot and Thompsons who've been around forever and a day. They're a big brand, but they're actually a family business too. Yeah. And like you said, they support the community, they reinvest, they are, they really want to keep those things going. So it is interesting that we think, I don't know, I think before I started working with family businesses about sort of 15, 16 years ago, I imagined it was just small business, because a family business, but actually when you look at it, there are companies that have been around, as you said, for hundreds of years that have handed it through. What happens though? So, I mean, not every family member or not every family has somebody in the family who can take over the business. And maybe you don't want to get rid of it because, just because you haven't got a son or a daughter or an uncle and auntie or a cousin who can step into your role, what do you do if you want to still keep the family business but want to remove yourself from the day-to-day of that family business?
My gosh, Debra, it's such a good question, and one that I think a lot of family business leaders and owners get surprised by. They just assume if I own it, I've got to run it. I must not only work in it, but I have to lead it, And I have had the chance over the last dozen years to meet several family business owners who don't even work in the business. I got to meet one family business owner who, what his job is, because it's his favorite thing to do, is mow the lawn. He loves mowing the lawn. They have several locations, and he's mowing the lawn all the time, all summer long. He doesn't run the place. He has a boss. That's it. So it really works well. And there are plenty of family businesses that have owners who don't work in the business, are never going to work in the business, or owners who aren't running it. They're doing payroll or mowing the lawn, you know? And I think it's a beautiful model to think of. We can own this asset and let somebody who's uniquely skilled run it.
I had the example with a family business the other day, a little while ago, a couple of months ago, where the father, who was the founder of the business, felt like he did have to be the leader. He had to be the person driving it all. And as we worked through the EOS process, there was this kind of light bulb moment about 6 months in where he kind of went, you know what? I don't think I want to be the visionary. And it's like, oh, okay. So tell me, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to do research and development stuff. That's all I want to do. I was like, fantastic. Okay, now we know what you love and what you're great at. And I think it actually made him realize that he didn't, when you start to define what all these accountabilities are and what's available, he was going, well, actually, I don't think I want all of that. I just want to do this very specific thing here. And it was, it just made my heart sing, because it's like, wow, here he is, like he's been committed to doing all this stuff when in actual fact, all he really wanted to do. I think it's similar to mowing the lawn, maybe not quite, but it's, that was what he wanted to do. It's perfect. You do not have to run the business.
You don't have to run it. You don't have to even work there. You don't have to. It's just so amazing when I've seen people go through what you got to witness recently. There's so much freedom. They get lighter. Like, I could just do what I'm suited for and let someone else run it, is so healthy. And sadly, I think it's actually quite uncommon. But I want it to be more and more common. I mean, why just because your great grandmother wanted to start a business would you want to be in the same industry? Like, there's no reason that should happen, So it happens in some businesses, but sadly, I think there's a lot of next generation family business owners who suffer with things like, drug abuse and chemical abuse because they feel trapped by the business, and it's very sad. They don't have to be.
No, that's absolutely right. Actually, there's another family business that's here in New Zealand that I've seen where it wasn't actually that, the sons and the daughters that actually wanted to take it over. It actually ended up being a cousin. And so I guess as your family gets bigger and you've been around for a lot longer, you do have more options. But like you said, if I'd followed my father, I'd be in IT sales. If I'd followed my mother, I'd be a travel agent. And neither of those things particularly appeal to me. But, that's what a family business is saying, right? Is, well, you should come and do what I've been doing because that's what I wanted to do. Yeah. It's just almost, when you look at it like that, it's just a bit silly, really, isn't it?
It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, why would that even happen? And it certainly does. And of course, some people grow up with fond memories of the business. It's the only thing they can imagine doing, right? But I don't know why we would think that the next generation would just be really excited about the industry we happen to be excited about.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's what I really love about EOS. I think that it actually gives that framework. It gives the opportunity to actually question things that maybe have never been questioned before. You can actually go through the whole process and kind of go, okay, this is a structure we're looking at that we need to run this business. Do I really want a part in this, or what part do I want to play in it?
Yes.
And often they've just, naturally assumed this is what's going to happen. Now you're giving them a chance to go, oh, actually, I wouldn't mind doing this, or actually, I wouldn't mind not being in the business. That's an option too.
I love reminding people that when Gino Wickman created EOS, the seeds were planted when he was working with his own dad in the family business, and they sold that business. I just love reminding people. I mean, some people are like, oh, he sold it. But, he was working with his dad when he started creating these. I can only imagine he had family business in mind as he created this tool. And I'm never going to ask him because I don't want to find out he didn't. So don't go and ask him.
And you know what I find really fascinating, because I obviously had the pleasure of meeting Gino in person at the conference this year. But he's obviously been the visionary for a long, long time with EOS before and now we've gone on to our third considered visionary. But in
Yes.
the family business, he was the integrator. So it's interesting too that, his dad was a visionary, he was the integrator. I think in different businesses and the different requirements, you actually may end up wearing different hats. I'm
Yes.
embracing my visionariness these days. I've been an integrator for other people for most of my life. So, GM roles are very much about managing the business and the minute detail and the people. And I did that for many, many years. But in my own business, I've realized, reading Rocket Fuel again, it's like, oh my goodness, I am a typical visionary. Yeah.
I think you're really onto something with that. I've seen a lot of people be an integrator because they thought they should, or they just happened to be good at it when they were young and they just kept doing it or whatever, right? I've actually seen family businesses too with this idea that the only way you can ever be the visionary is if you work your way up from, let's say, doing stuff to being on the leadership team, to being the integrator, to being the visionary. And it does not work that way. No. Thank goodness. This was in November. I was with a family business and they'd been working for 3 years on getting the next generation leader prepared to be the integrator. And they finally realized, oh my gosh, she has all the vision to be a visionary. They can hire an integrator.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to spend a decade in that integrator seat and then be a visionary. Oh, it changed everything. Everything changed when they realized that. Yeah.
It's also really funny because I think I've always sort of wondered, I love EOS, so I know what EOS does, but I always wonder what other people saw when I actually presented it and what they sort of took out of it. And I've been presenting to a couple of my colleagues who are leadership coaches and working with businesses, and one of them actually said to me, the thing that was most unique about EOS for him was the fact that it actually was a visionary role. The fact that there is a visionary and an integrator, it gives permission for people who are founders to remove themselves from the day-to-day running of the business and actually take on a role that really adds huge value to the business, but doesn't need to be involved. And I think in a lot of traditional structures or operating systems, it's about hierarchy. Like I said, you have to work your way up before you get there. Actually, this is about, here's a box. And if that is your unique ability and that's what your God-given talent is, then, get into that box and start doing that stuff.
Yes. It's so freeing. I recently was talking with a family business and they tried to put these two brothers in the visionary seat because they thought, well, that's the only fair thing to do.
Yes.
Luckily, they stopped doing that. One of them was just uniquely skilled to come up with wild and crazy ideas and see the future of their industry and make connections. The other one's a genius project manager, and that's what they do now. One's the visionary, one's a project manager. They have a non-family member as the integrator. It works. But when they both felt like they had to share this job of being the top boss, it wasn't even visionary stuff. It was just hierarchy, which is not the point. So
Actually, that is my last question for you. I just brought something else to mind. So, often in families, there is an expectation that, yes, let's say two siblings should be paid the same amount and should do an equal role in the business.
Yeah.
But that's not always the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So how do you work through getting people into their right positions so they're actually doing the stuff that they love and really enjoy what they're doing, but that they can be looked after, if you like, by the family? There's ways to remunerate without having to do it through the business, isn't there?
Oh gosh, yes. And this is really something that's important, I think, for the spouses that I work with, is because it's often they're the ones motivating that idea that they should have an equal role and get paid an equal amount. For certainly in the business. And actually, here's a funny thing. I believe what I'm quoting here is research that was done in North America. So this is not global numbers, but what research found is most family businesses underpay their family members, even though there's this concept that, you work for your dad, you're making too much money. It's actually research says they get underpaid. But anyway, I like to say, just pay your people market rate. It's the easier way. Just pay them the market rate. I don't care if there's $70,000 difference between your kids or 100 or 1 million. Pay them a market rate. But please, when it comes to if you're paying for weddings or cars or giving gifts at holidays or birthdays, make that equal. Right?
Yes.
Make that equal. Don't, and then, if one of your kids makes $10,000 a year and the other one makes 100, please don't give one kid a $90,000 gift and the other one nothing. Please, no. Fair is fair. Fair is equal in the family. Fair is market rate in the business. And then ownership, that can be equal. or not. You've got to get really clear about what is your philosophy about ownership. And some family businesses do say you can't have ownership unless you're running it. Well, okay, if that's the case. Or others say, we don't care what your job is. We don't even care if you work there. You're going to be equal owners. That's up to the philosophy of ownership. But man, make the family side fair as equal. Make the business side fair as what your kid could make somewhere else.
Market rate, absolutely. Market rate. And that's the difference between, I mean, we in a traditional kind of non-family thing, it's governance versus operation, right? You know, you may well be a shareholder and you may even be a director, but your role in the business, if it is that of a lawnmower, then you're going to get paid the rate that a lawnmower guy gets paid. Yeah. Oh,
You'll get paid appropriately for that job.
Cool. Hey, look, we could talk all day, but unfortunately we don't have all day. I'm going to ask you before we finish up, you know, where can people find this really great information? So I know both of your books. So the first one is called Start Here.
Yes. Start Here, a guide for family business succession. That can be found on Amazon or with you. The second one is called Married to the Family Business, and that's a handbook for spouses of family business owners, also on Amazon or with you. And then the workshop that I created for spouses can be found at healthyfamilybusiness.com.
Nice.
Believe it or not, nobody bought healthyfamilybusiness.com before me. It was just, cheap as could be. So there's another fun thing at that website. I made a very short assessment that a family business owner or leader can take to identify where they're really healthy and where they're not. So that's there on that website.
Wonderful. So that's healthyfamilybusiness.com. You can find your books on Amazon and, of course, Sara B. Stern on LinkedIn if anybody wants to talk to you as well. Hey, Sara, look, thank you so much. Again, I always enjoy talking to you and can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully not too far away.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And I really look forward to making trouble with you in person soon.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you.